The earth trembled beneath the weight of its own demise. The sky, once a vast canvas of blue and white, had long since turned into a swirling maelstrom of toxic clouds. The oceans were dying, choked with pollution and acid rain. The forests had become skeletal remnants of their former selves, their blackened husks whispering tales of a world that once thrived. Humanity's golden age had crumbled under the weight of its own excesses, leaving only one option: escape. Dr. Elias Carter stood at the edge of the massive launch facility, gazing up at the towering colossus that represented the last hope of the human race, the Archship Eos. It was a culmination of 100 years of research, engineering, and desperate hope, a vessel built to carry the last remnants of humanity beyond the dying cradle of their birth, toward a new home among the stars. Elias was no stranger to loss. His wife and daughter had perished in the Great Purge, the final days of Earth's self-inflicted apocalypse. Now, as the lead scientist on the Exodus project, his grief had been channeled into purpose. He had sacrificed everything to ensure the mission's success. There could be no mistakes, no second chances. As he turned from the looming spacecraft, his earpiece crackled to life. "Dr. Carter, this is Mission Control. All final checks are complete. We are go for launch in T-minus 6 hours. Elias exhaled, his breath shaky. "Understood. I'll be there shortly." He walked briskly through the compound, his mind racing with the weight of what was about to happen. The Archship Eos was not just another spacecraft. It was the very lifeline of the human race. A fleet of 12 ships had been originally planned, but one by one, catastrophe had whittled their numbers down to a single hope. Eos was the last chance. Inside the facility, thousands of people prepared for departure. Families huddled together, whispering last-minute prayers, while children clung to stuffed animals that would be among the few relics of Earth they could carry with them. Engineers made their final inspections, their movement precise but laced with urgency. The air smelled of metal, sweat, and anxiety. "Dr. Carter," a voice called out. He turned to see Commander Mara Vasquez, the mission's designated leader. Clad in her navy blue exosuit, she looked every bit the battle-hardened warrior she was. "We need to talk. Now." They stepped into a private briefing room. Mara closed the door behind her, her expression grim. "We have a problem," she said, tapping on a hollow table. A set of red-highlighted reports flickered to life. "Our long-range scanners picked up an anomaly near the launch site. We don't know what it is, but it's moving. Fast." Elias studied the data, his stomach tightening. This wasn't part of the plan. "Could it be a rogue weather pattern?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "No chance. This thing is deliberate." Mara met his gaze. "And it's heading straight for us." A chilling realization settled over them. They weren't alone. Alarms blared suddenly, an ear-splitting wail that sent a shiver down Elias' spine. "Intruder alert! Intruder alert! All personnel report to emergency stations." Mara grabbed her sidearm. "Looks like we won't have to wait to find out what it is." Elias felt his pulse hammer against his ribs. The Exodus hadn't even begun, and already humanity's last hope was in jeopardy. As they rushed toward the main control deck, the thought gnawed at the back of his mind. Was it possible that someone or something didn't want them to leave? Alarms howled through the Archship Eos launch facility, sending an electric current of fear to the thousands of people waiting for departure. The flashing red warning lights painted the steel walls in a pulsing glow, each flicker a reminder that something had gone terribly wrong. Elias Carter sprinted down the hallway alongside Commander Mara Vasquez. Their boots pounded against the metal flooring, the echoes swallowed by the chaos unfolding around them. "What the hell is happening?" Elias shouted over the blaring sirens. Mara had one hand on her earpiece, her sharp eyes scanning the corridor ahead. Security teams are reporting an unidentified entity within the outer perimeter. They say it's moving fast, too fast. Elias's mind raced. "Is it human?" "That's the thing," Mara replied, gripping her firearm tightly. "It doesn't seem to be. Our sensors can't even get a proper reading." A cold dread coiled in Elias's gut. Earth had long been abandoned by nature's mercy, but the remnants of civilization had no knowledge of any life forms that could move like this. The mission was humanity's last hope, But what if something else had been waiting for this exact moment? They burst into the command center, where a dozen operators frantically worked at their stations. Screens flickered with lines of code, grainy security feeds, and pulsing red warnings. The room smelled of sweat and burning circuits. At the center of the chaos stood Dr. Helena Kwan, the mission's chief of operations. "Tell me you have something," Mara demanded, her voice cutting through the noise. Helena shook her head, her brow furrowed. "We don't know what we're dealing with. It appeared on our motion sensors 10 minutes ago, right outside the facility. Every time we try to scan it, the signal scrambles." Elias stepped closer to the main monitor. A distorted image flickered on the screen. It was hard to tell what he was looking at. A humanoid shape, but shifting, blurring at the edges, as if reality itself was rejecting its form. "It's getting closer," Helena whispered, her voice barely audible over the sirens. Then the screen went black. A deep silence fell over the room as the alarm suddenly cut off. The air itself seemed to grow heavier. Mara exchanged a wary glance with Elias. Something was here. A metallic clang echoed from the far end of the corridor. "Security teams report." Mara barked into her radio. Static. Elias swallowed hard. "This is impossible. We have the most advanced tech available. Nothing should be able to get this close without us detecting it. And yet here we are," Mara muttered, raising her weapon. Another sound, closer this time. A scraping, almost like metal against metal. Then a single message blinked onto one of the nearby consoles. "You should not leave." Elias felt a chill crawl down his spine. The message hadn't come from anyone on their network. Helena took a shaky breath. "Who or what sent that?" "I think we're about to find out," Mara murmured, stepping toward the entrance with slow, deliberate movements. The doors to the control room slid open. The hallway beyond was dark. Too dark. The facility had emergency lights. Yet now, an unnatural void swallowed the corridor. Then, out of the blackness, something moved, a distorted silhouette, its shape flickering in and out of focus, like a glitch in reality. It took a step forward. And then another. The air grew ice cold. Elias felt frozen in place, his breath coming in short gasps. This wasn't an accident. This thing had come for them. It knew. Mara fired. The bullet never made contact. Instead, the figure absorbed it, its form rippling like disturbed water. Then, it lifted what could only be called an arm, and the room around them seemed to shudder. The screens blinked rapidly. A new message appeared. "Do not leave." And then the lights cut out completely. The control room was suffocating in its silence. The only sound was the erratic beeping of the failing monitors and the distant hum of the emergency power struggling to keep the facility online. Mara Vasquez tightened her grip on her weapon, though she knew deep down it was useless. Elias Carter swallowed hard, trying to suppress the sheer panic clawing at his mind. This wasn't just a malfunction. This was an invasion. The entity stood at the threshold, its shape constantly shifting, warping in and out of visibility, as if reality itself couldn't decide whether it existed or not. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but with every flicker, its limbs twisted into unnatural angles, elongating and retracting like a living glitch. It wasn't human. It wasn't like anything they had ever encountered before. Helena Kwan clutched the edge of the console. Her eyes darted to the security screens, which were now filled with nothing but static. She tried to reestablish contact with the security teams outside, but there was no response. "Dr. Carter," she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "What the hell are we dealing with?" Elias exhaled, forcing himself to stay rational. I don't know, but if it can manipulate electronic systems at will, then it's something beyond our understanding." The message on the screen still blinked. "Do not leave." Mara took a slow step forward, weapon raised. "Who are you?" she demanded. "What do you want?" The entity didn't speak. It didn't move. But something in the air shifted. A presence, a weight that pressed against their minds. And then, without warning, it surged forward. Mara fired again, but just like before, the bullets never made contact. The thing absorbed them, its form rippling like liquid before forming instantly. Then it raised one limb, something between an arm and a tendril, and the room shattered around them. The walls twisted. The floor warped beneath their feet. The control panels flickered wildly, and for a moment, Elias felt as if he were falling through space. The world itself had lost its shape, reality bending like a dream on the verge of breaking. And then darkness. Elias woke up to the sound of a distant alarm. His head pounded, his vision swam. How much time had passed? The room was in ruins. Broken panels, exposed wiring, and the scent of burnt circuits filled the air. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long, shifting shadows. A groan echoed nearby. He turned to see Mara pushing herself up from the wreckage. Blood trickled down her temple, but she was alive. What the hell happened? Elias helped her up. That thing, it did something to the room. Warp reality somehow. Helena was slumped over a broken console, barely conscious. Elias rushed to her side, shaking her gently. Helena, wake up. She stirred, eyes fluttering open. Did we lose power? Elias grimaced. I think we lost a lot more than that. Mara checked her communicator. Still nothing. We're completely cut off. A loud bang echoed through the facility. The three of them froze. Something else was moving. A cold dread settled over them as another noise followed, a dragging sound. Slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. Mara motioned for silence and crept toward the door, peering out. Elias followed, his breath shallow. The corridor was nearly pitch black, but in the dim emergency lighting he saw movement. Not just one shape, several. More of them. The shifting, flickering figures loomed in the distance, their forms unstable yet terrifyingly real. They stood motionless for a moment, as if sensing their presence. Then, in unison, they turned their heads toward them. Mara reacted instantly. Run. She grabbed Elias by the arm and bolted down the opposite corridor, Helena close behind. The three of them sprinted through the labyrinthine hallways, their only guide the weak flickering lights overhead. The creatures followed. No footsteps, no sounds, just shifting, warping, phasing in and out of reality as they gained on them. Elias's lungs burned as they reached a heavy security door. Mara slammed the emergency override, but the system was unresponsive. Damn it! They must have fried the circuits, she shouted. Helena's fingers flew over the manual control panel. I can bypass it, but I need time. Time was something they didn't have. The entities closed in, their movement erratic, but relentless. One reached out, its fingers stretching impossibly long, grasping at the air just inches from Elias's face. Mara punched the emergency release with all her strength. The door groaned, then slid open just enough for them to slip through. They shoved inside, pulling it shut just as the creatures reached them. Silence. Elias's heart pounded as he pressed against the door, waiting for impact. But none came. Mara and Helena exchanged confused glances. Why weren't they forcing their way in? Then Elias noticed something. The room they had entered wasn't just another hallway. It was the launch bay. Rows of cryopods lined the chamber, illuminated by the soft blue glow of their interfaces. The massive bulkhead doors leading to the Ark ship Eos stood at the far end, still intact. Helena exhaled. We made it to the ship. Mara wasn't convinced. Yeah, but why did they stop chasing us? Elias didn't have an answer. Helena rushed to the launch controls, fingers flying over the touchscreen. The ship's systems are still online. I can override the security protocols and initiate launch. Mara hesitated. We don't even know if we're safe yet. Elias glanced back at the door, where the entities had last been seen. I don't think we have a choice. The screen in front of Helena flashed to life. A new message appeared. You cannot escape. The facility shuddered violently. A deep, inhuman voice echoed through speakers, though it seemed to resonate inside their heads as much as in the air. You should not leave. The temperature in the room plummeted. Elias could see his own breath. Whatever these things were, they were trying to stop the launch. Helena gritted her teeth. Screw this. She slammed the final command. A warning alarm blared. Launch sequence initiated. The floor trembled beneath them as the docking clamps released. The ship's engines roared to life. A deep, thunderous hum that sent vibrations through their bones. Then the creatures screamed. A shrill, mind-piercing wail reverberated through the facility as the shadows lurched back, recoiling from the light of the Ark ship's engines. They were afraid. Mara's eyes widened. They can't follow us into space. Elias barely had time to process the revelation before the ship lurched upward. The artificial gravity kicked in as they were pressed back into their seats. The Ark ship Eos lifted off. As the dying Earth shrank below them, Elias dared to believe, for the first time, that they had escaped. But deep inside, he knew the truth. This wasn't over. The Ark ship Eos drifted silently through the abyss, the distant light of Proxima Centauri barely illuminating the void. The crew, though relieved to have escaped Earth's destruction, remained unsettled by the ominous events leading to their departure. The memories of the creatures that had tried to stop them still. Elias sat at the command console, staring at the endless darkness ahead. Helena, run another deep space scan. Something doesn't feel right. Helena, already on edge, tapped a series of commands into the ship system. The scanners hummed, pulsing with waves of data. The results appeared within seconds. Her breath hitched. Elias, there's something out there. A mass. It's moving. Mara leaned over her shoulder. Could just be space debris. Helena shook her head. No, it's too large. And it's not just drifting. It's following us. A cold dread settled in the room. The silence of space suddenly felt suffocating. The ship's lights flickered. A whisper, too faint to be heard clearly, slid through the comms. You should not have left. Elias shot to his feet. Did everyone hear that? Mara's face paled. That wasn't just static, was it? Helena's hands trembled as she adjusted the frequency. It's coming from outside the ship, but that's impossible. A sudden jolt rocked the Ark ship Eos, sending the crew sprawling. The ship's alarms blared to life. Warning! Unknown gravitational anomaly detected. Elias scrambled back to his seat, gripping the controls. Helena, divert power to the thrusters. Get us out of here. Helena's fingers flew over the console. I'm trying. Something is pulling us back. Mara clenched her jaw. Is it the mass? The sensors blinked erratically. The black mass behind them was no longer just a blip on the radar. It was growing. Or rather, it was getting closer. The ship groaned under the increasing pressure. Outside, the darkness seemed to ripple, almost like a living entity. Then a face emerged. It was unlike anything they'd ever seen, a being woven from shadow and void, its form shifting and undulating like liquid night. Its eyes, if they could be called that, were abyssal pits that reflected nothing. It spoke without sound, its words crawling into their minds. You took something that was never yours. Elias clutched his head, his skull throbbing from the sheer force of the voice. Helena let out a strangled gasp, collapsing to her knees. Mara gritted her teeth, resisting the pressure, crushing their thoughts. Elias forced himself to focus. Who are you? What do you want? The darkness pulsed. You were warned, but you did not listen. A flood of images slammed into their minds. Visions of Earth, not as they had left it, but in its ancient past. A world teeming with civilizations that had risen and fallen before recorded history. A world where humanity was not the first. And then, something beneath the surface. Something buried. Something imprisoned. Elias gasped as the realization hit him. We weren't running from the destruction of Earth. We were being kept in. The void being loomed closer, its presence pressing against the hull of the ship. You have unleashed what should have remained sealed. Helena, barely able to lift her head, whispered, What do we do? The darkness seemed to hesitate, as if contemplating their fate. Then it spoke one final time. You cannot outrun it. The ship lurched forward violently. The gravitational pull vanished, releasing them from its grasp. Elias gasped for air. The ship's alarm silenced. The dark mass remained behind, watching. The crew sat in stunned silence, the weight of the encounter settling in. Mara exhaled sharply. We need a plan, because whatever we've unleashed, it's coming. Elias looked out into the void, his hands clenched into fists. Then we make our stand. The dark mass loomed in the void, silent and watchful. Inside the Arkship Eos, the crew sat frozen, their minds racing through the implications of the cryptic message. You took something that was never yours. Elias's fingers trembled over the console. What did we take? Helena, pale and shaken, whispered, What if it's not about something we physically took? What if it's us? Mara scoffed, though her voice lacked confidence. That's ridiculous. We didn't steal ourselves. Elias exchanged a knowing glance with Helena. What if we did? Before anyone could respond, the external sensors flickered. The dark mass moved again, its form shifting like liquid shadows. Then the ship's system shut down. A deep humming filled the air, a force unseen but undeniable press against their minds. The crew fell to their knees, gasping for breath as whispers flooded their thoughts. Memories, dreams, fears, all unraveling at once. You do not belong here. A vision snapped into Elias's mind. He saw Earth, but not as they had left it. The surface cracked, glowing with an eerie light. Beneath it, something stirred, something ancient. The creatures, the ones who had tried to stop them, were not the invaders. They were the last defense. The real invaders were humanity. Elias staggered to his feet. The hum was deafening now, vibrating through every cell of his body. We have to go back. Mara's eyes widened. Are you insane? We barely got out alive. Helena held her head, sweat beading on her forehead. No, Elias is right. Elias forced himself to speak through the pressure in his skull. We weren't meant to leave. Not because we were being held captive, but because Earth was holding something inside us. Mara shook her head. That doesn't make sense. The dark mass surged forward. A soundless explosion rippled through space, engulfing the ship. For a moment, there was nothing but darkness. Then light. When Elias opened his eyes, he was no longer on the ship. He stood in a vast expanse, stars swirling around him like dust in a cosmic wind. A figure emerged, a shifting form, neither solid nor liquid, neither human nor alien. It spoke without speaking. The cycle must not be broken. Elias's mind flooded with images. Earth, eons ago. Humanity was never the dominant species. They were created, vessels for something greater, something buried deep within their very DNA, something that had slept for millennia. And when humanity tried to escape, it awoke. The figure reached toward him, and in that instant, Elias understood. There was only one way to end this. They had to return. The ship's alarms blared back to life. Elias gasped as he found himself back in his seat, the dark mass retreating. Helena clutched her chest. What happened? Mara's hands were shaking. I saw something. A warning. Elias didn't hesitate. Turn us around. We have to go back. Helena's fingers danced over the controls. The ship groaned as it shifted course, heading straight back to Earth. The dark mass did not pursue. It had delivered its message. The choice was made. As the Arkship Eos entered Earth's atmosphere, the planet welcomed them. The surface was still. The creatures were gone. The sky, once filled with fire, was now clear. Elias closed his eyes as the ship landed. He could feel it now, the presence inside him, inside all of them. Waiting, the whispers ceased. The cycle had been restored, and humanity, for better or worse, had returned home.